I am going to tell you this the way I would if we were curled up on the same couch right now, knees touching, the kind of late night where makeup is gone and honesty feels heavier than sleep. I am not going to pretend I did the right thing. I am just going to tell you what I did and what it cost me. My name is Claire Morgan, I am 34 years old, and the worst night of my life did not happen in some dramatic hotel room or anonymous bar. It happened at a rental house on the coast, during my company's annual summer offsite, with fairy lights strung between pine trees and the sound of waves rolling in like breathing. If you had seen photos of that weekend, you would think it looked magical. You would see the glossy version of everything. Smiling coworkers with cocktails, sunset yoga sessions on the deck, team building games on the sand. You would not see the tiny cracks in every frame. You would not see the way I kept checking my phone for messages from my husband that never came. You would not see the way my manager watched me a second too long when I laughed. You would not see the way my best friend avoided my eyes in every group picture. The truth of that weekend sits somewhere between the photos and the parts one barely admit to myself. I work for a boutique marketing agency in a coastal town that is trying very hard to pretend it is a big city. We do campaign strategy for tech brands, lifestyle companies, anyone with too much money and not enough imagination. I am the senior strategist, the one they trot out for big pitches, the one they call when something is on fire. At home, I am married to Josh. We met when I was 25 and exhausted from dating boys who loved potential more than commitment. Josh was different. Solid, kind, a software engineer who liked routines and hated surprises. For a long time that felt like safety. Lately it had started to feel like being wrapped in a weighted blanket I couldn't push off. We had been trying to have a baby for a year with no success, and the trying had turned into schedules and charts and mechanical intimacy that left me feeling more like a lab subject than a woman. Every conversation about it slid into the same grooves. We would be patient. It would happen when it was meant to. He would squeeze my shoulder and say that we were fine, that he was fine, that nothing between us had changed. But it had. I could feel it every time his hand slipped away too quickly. The week before the offsite, he told me he could not come to the couple's barbecue part on the second night because there was a release at work. He said it with that apologetic half smile of his, the one that sounds like I am sorry and also like this is not negotiable. I tried to be understanding. That is what good wives do, right? They nod, swallow their disappointment, tell themselves work is temporary and marriage is forever. I kissed him on the cheek and told him it was fine. It was not fine. Our offsite always takes place at the same place, a cluster of rented houses perched above the ocean, all connected by boardwalks and shared fire pits. It is the kind of place with white sofas that no one is allowed to sit on with a drink, big windows facing the sea, and bowls of artfully arranged green apples that nobody eats. The kind of place that looks designed more for photos than for living. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon. My carpool was me, my assistant Harper, and my closest friend at work, a copywriter named Mia. If I could draw you a picture of Mia in your head, I would say this: she is the kind of woman who makes strangers tell her their secrets while they are standing in line for coffee. Big brown eyes, easy laugh, chronic lateness. She had been through 2 divorces already and talked about both of them as if they were oddly educational group projects. On the drive down, she asked me if I was excited for the weekend. I lied and told her I was. She gave me a look that said she knew better and then started telling a story about one of her ex-husband's fear of seagulls just to make me laugh. When we pulled up to the main house, our creative director was already on the deck, barefoot with a beer, acting like the host of some sun-drenched talk show. His name is Aaron Blake. He is 41, charming, painfully observant, and married to a woman so ethereal and intimidating that most people go silent when she walks into a room. I had met her twice. Tall, sharp cheekbones, eyes like she was always assessing whether a room deserved her presence. Her name is Elise. She rarely came to these things. Aaron and I had been working together for 6 years. He promoted me, fought for my raise, told clients I was the reason they hit their numbers. He also had a way of standing too close when we were going over decks, of letting his hand rest 1 second too long on my back when he steered me away from a bad conversation at a networking event. There was always the ghost of something there. Never enough to name. Always enough to feel. He greeted us as we hauled our bags in, his voice warm, his eyes bright. He asked me how the pitch deck was coming along for the Monday morning client. I told him it was done. He told me he never doubted it would be. His gaze lingered on my face a fraction too long before he turned to hug Mia. Little things like that are easy to ignore when life is stable. They are less easy when everything at home feels fragile. The first night passed in that familiar blur of structured fun. Icebreaker games on the lawn. A sunset bonfire with craft beer and overpriced marshmallows. Group selfies with sea spray on our cheeks. Someone pulled out a speaker and put on nostalgic songs from early 2000s college parties. People danced badly on the deck. It should have been easy. It was not. Because every time I reached for my phone out of habit, there was nothing from Josh. Not an asking how it is going. Not a send me a picture of the view. Nothing. I texted him a photo of the sunset anyway. He answered with a single heart emoji 20 minutes later. You know how they say that the opposite of love is not hate but indifference? I always thought that was a clever line. That night I understood it at a bodily level. I felt smaller than that heart, smaller than his attention span, smaller than everything. Aaron must have noticed my mood shift because he ended up next to me at the railing while everyone else argued over the rules of some drinking game. He asked me, in that quiet way he has, if I wanted another beer or if I wanted an excuse to sneak away from the chaos. I said I was fine. He said that fine is a suspicious word and he did not believe me. I rolled my eyes and repeated that I was fine, but my voice cracked just enough that we both heard it. He did not push. He just stood there next to me, hands in his pockets, looking out at the dark water. The wind tugged his hair a little. The silence between us felt strangely safe. It would have been easier if he had been an obvious villain. If he had been arrogant or crude or careless. He was none of those things. He was attentive, generous with praise, fiercely protective of the people on his team. He had 2 daughters he talked about like they hung the moon. He was the kind of man everyone trusted instinctively. Everyone including me. I went to bed that night sober and restless, listening to the ocean slam itself against the cliffs while my roommates whispered in the next bed over. I checked my phone one more time. No new messages from Josh. I turned the screen face down on the nightstand and tried to sleep. The second day was when things began to shift from uncomfortable to dangerous. Mornings were workshops and breakout sessions. I gave a presentation about storytelling in saturated markets, standing barefoot on a rug in front of a wall of glass while the horizon glowed behind me. People took notes and nodded and told me afterward that I made the complex simple. Aaron sat in the front row and watched me with that small proud smile that made my chest ache. After lunch, the schedule said free time. Some people went paddleboarding. Some signed up for a wine tasting. I found myself on the quieter side of the property near the smallest house, the one they called the cottage even though it was bigger than any place I had ever lived. It was usually reserved for senior leadership and their families. I had no business being there. Except I did. Because Aaron was there, sitting on the steps with a notebook in his lap. He asked me if I was hiding from people. I said whenever there is a question that involves people or not people, I usually chose not people. He laughed and said he knew that about me already. He asked if I wanted to walk down to the overlook. I should have said no. I said yes. The path wound through scrubby bushes and crooked pines, the ocean visible in slivers between branches. When we reached the overlook, the view knocked the air out of me. The cliffs dropped away into a rolling slate-colored sea, waves crashing in white bursts. The wind was stronger there, it tugged at my hair and jacket, made my eyes water. We stood side by side, fingers curled around the wooden railing. He asked how things were really going at home. I tried to deflect. He waited. There is something about being asked gently that cracks you open faster than any aggressive interrogation. I told him about the trying for a baby. About the schedules. About the way sex had turned into another item on a shared calendar. About Josh's constant late nights and his "I am just tired's." About the single-word texts. About how small I felt when my husband talked to me like he was giving status updates to a project manager. I did not mean to say that much. The words just spilled out. When I finished, there was a long moment where the only sound was the wind. Then he told me he understood more than I might think. He said his marriage looked perfect on social media, but that in reality he and Elise spoke more through shared calendars and child pickup plans than anything resembling intimacy. He said they spent months sleeping on different sides of the bed like strangers in a hotel. He said the only time she really looked at him anymore was when she was calculating something. I had only ever seen them as a polished couple at holiday parties. Hearing that hurt in a way I did not expect. He said he was not excusing anything. Just that he knew what it felt like to be physically in a life that did not feel like your own anymore. Then he turned and looked at me in a way he had never quite allowed himself to before. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth, then back to my eyes. My stomach flipped. The air between us stretched thin. He said if he was crossing a line just by standing there thinking what he was thinking, I should tell him. I stood there in that wind, with the ocean roaring below us and sun on the side of his face, and I knew the right answer. The right answer was to step back, thank him for listening, go back to the main house, call my husband, and tell him everything I had just told another man. I did not give the right answer. I did not say anything at all. And that silence was an answer. He did not touch me. Not yet. He just exhaled, slow, like he had been holding his breath for a very long time, and said he was not going to pretend he had not thought about me before. That it had started as professional respect and turned into something he had tried and failed to ignore. That he hoped to God I would not hate him for telling me. I said I did not hate him. My voice came out barely audible. We walked back in silence. The rest of the afternoon I was in a haze. I smiled through a brainstorming session, wrote words on sticky notes I did not remember later, laughed at jokes that did not land. Every time I accidentally glanced across the room, he was already looking. The couple's barbecue that night felt like something happening in an alternate universe. Partners drove down for a few hours of curated domestic bliss. We were supposed to introduce our husbands and wives, snap photos with shared plates of ribs, put evidence on social media that we were all balancing work and love like professionals. Josh did not come. He texted me an hour before it started to say that the deployment had turned into a crisis and he was really sorry but he could not make it. He sent another heart emoji. I stared at the little red symbol on my screen while other people walked in holding hands. Mia arrived late, eyeliner smudged, dragging a date she had clearly picked in a hurry from some app. She hugged me hard and told me that Josh was a fool. Her eyes were too bright. She was already half drunk. We stood together near the grill, watching couples laugh and fight over food. She pointed out one pair where the husband was clearly more in love than the wife. She pointed out another where the wife clung a little too hard to the husband's arm every time a pretty coworker walked past. She has always been good at reading relationships. I asked her what mine looked like from the outside. She said it looked like someone had turned the volume down but forgotten to tell me. I laughed, but my chest hurt. When it got dark and the fairy lights flicked on, I went inside to escape the noise. I ended up alone in the kitchen, leaning against the island, staring at a bowl of uneaten potato salad like it held answers. That is where Aaron found me. He asked if I wanted to go over the Monday deck to make sure we had not missed anything, a thin excuse neither of us believed. I said yes because it sounded less scandalous than saying I wanted to be anywhere he was that was not this room. We went upstairs to the smaller den in the back of the house, the one with a sliding glass door that opened onto a balcony. The room was empty. A laptop sat on the coffee table waiting. Outside, the ocean was a dark smear. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, leaving a safe space between us, and opened slides we both knew by heart. We talked about image choice and font pairings like our lives depended on it. Our shoulders slowly relaxed. At some point, a joke landed just right and I laughed, tipping my head back. When I looked over, he was watching me again with that same look from the overlook. He said my name softly. My heart stuttered. I told him not to say it like that. He asked how he was saying it. I said like it meant more. He said that was because it did. There was a long stretch of silence where neither of us moved. I could hear the muffled noise of people downstairs. Someone cheering over a game. MIA's laugh slicing through the air. It all felt very far away. He said we did not have to do anything. That he would go back downstairs and I could forget that conversation on the overlook ever happened. That we could both go back to our lives and keep playing our parts. He also said that if I asked him to stay, he would. I do not know if you have ever felt your life hinge on a single breath. It is not as dramatic in the moment as it sounds when you tell it later. It is quiet. Almost unbearably so. Just the sound of your own blood and a choice you cannot unmake. I asked him to stay. He moved closer. Slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. He lifted his hand and touched my face, fingers warm against my cheek. I closed my eyes into it. It felt like the first time anyone had really held my face in a very long time. Not for show. Not as a placeholder. Just because they wanted to feel the shape of me in their palm. He kissed me. Soft at first, as if he was afraid I might break. Then deeper when I did not pull away. It was not fireworks. It was not some movie montage. It was something quieter and more devastating. It felt like admitting something I had known and refused to say. For a few minutes there was nobody else. Not downstairs. Not at home. Not anywhere. Just the taste of regret and hunger and something dangerously close to tenderness. When we finally broke apart, we both just sat there breathing. He said we had time before anyone noticed we were gone. His voice was rough. I said that scared me. He nodded. He said it scared him too. We did not sleep together that night. I need you to know that not because it makes me morally better. It does not. I crossed the line the second I let him touch me. But I need you to know it because people like to reduce stories like mine to bodies. As if the worst part is always skin. Sometimes the worst part is the honesty. We sat there on that couch, not touching, and told each other truths we should have told our spouses. About loneliness. About resentment. About fear. About wanting to be seen and how embarrassing it felt to admit that. By the time we went back down, I felt like I had stepped into another version of my life without telling anyone, including myself. Mia gave me a curious look when I came back into the lights. Later that night, when we were brushing our teeth side by side in the tiny bathroom, she asked me if something had happened. I told her no. She stared at me in the mirror long enough that I knew she did not believe me. The next morning, everything had shifted. Not in obvious ways. We still sat in meetings. We still scribbled on whiteboards. We still played stupid games on the beach where we had to build structures out of driftwood to symbolize teamwork. But I was hyper-aware of Aaron in a way that made me feel both alive and sick. At lunch, people spread out across the deck with plates balanced on their laps. I ended up at a small table with Mia and one of the junior designers, a sweet kid named Oliver who always looked half amazed that he got paid to draw. We were mid-conversation about nothing significant when a notification lit up my phone. An unknown number. The preview showed the first few words of a message. I know about the balcony. I felt the world tilt. My fork clattered against my plate. Mia frowned and asked if I was okay. I mumbled some excuse and stood up, heart pounding in my ears, walking quickly down the hall toward the quietest corner of the house. I ducked into the laundry room and shut the door, hands shaking as I opened the message. It was only one sentence and a link. I know about the balcony. Check this. Every instinct in me screamed not to tap the link. I tapped it anyway. A grainy video opened. The angle was high and slightly to the side. It showed the small den upstairs from the night before. Me and Aaron on the couch, laughing at something on the laptop. Then the moment he moved closer. His hand on my face. The kiss. There was no sound. It did not need sound. The image was damning enough. The clip looped. Over and over. That moment of my life replaying on my screen, stripped of context, of feeling, of everything but the mechanics. Below the video, a second message appeared. Walk away from him today or I send this to his wife and your husband. I had thought I knew fear. I did not. Not until that moment. My thumb hovered over the screen again. I responded with the only thing I could type with numb fingers. Who is this? No answer. I tried calling the number. It went straight to nowhere. I stood there in that laundry room, the smell of detergent making me nauseous, and realized someone had been watching. Not just in the metaphorical way. In the literal, lens-focused, recording blinking red kind of way. Someone had camera access. Or someone had gotten very close with a phone in the hallway crack. Either way, they had me. The first person I thought of was not Josh. It was Mia. She was the only one who knew me well enough to know how much this would destroy me. She was also the only one who had looked at me last night with too sharp an eye and not asked more questions. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and slightly breathless like she had been running. She asked where I was. I told her. She said she would be there in a second. When she walked into the laundry room and saw my face, the brightness dropped. She closed the door behind her and asked what had happened. I handed her my phone. She watched the clip. Her expression did not change. She read the message below it. Her jaw tightened. She asked when this had come in. I told her. She asked if I had told anyone else. I told her no. She exhaled slowly. She said it could be a bluff. I shook my head and told her the angle. The quality. That this was either security footage or someone who had been deliberately hiding. She cursed under her breath. She asked why people insisted on modern surveillance when they could just mind their own business. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. I asked her what I was supposed to do. She went quiet. Then she said the thing I had been trying not to say out loud. Is it true that you want to walk away from him? She meant Aaron. I knew that. I nodded. Then this is a mercy, she said slowly, unkindly kind. You can end it now before it becomes something you cannot live without. Her words cut deeper than whatever anonymous person had sent that link. I stared at her. I asked her if that was what she would do. She said she would never let someone have that kind of power over her, that she had already lived through one messy divorce and one public affair, and she would not hand anyone the satisfaction of ruining her life again. She said if she were me, she would walk away now, tell myself it was a line I stepped over once and then backed away from, and never give that person the satisfaction of seeing me obey. I asked her if she thought I owed it to Josh to tell him. She flinched. Then she said something honest. She said I owed it to myself to decide whether my marriage was dead before I set fire to it. That if it was already dead, this clip was not the match. It was just proof. Her eyes were too bright. She was angry. I could not tell at who. At me. At men. At the world. I asked her if she had done this. If she had recorded it. If this was her twisted way of stopping me from making a mistake. She looked wounded. She said no. Not loudly. Just very quietly. There are moments when you have to decide to either believe the person you have loved as a friend for a decade or believe the narrative that makes you feel safest. I believed her. That did not mean I trusted anyone else. We decided I would find Aaron somewhere away from other people and end whatever it was before it grew. Not because the message had told me to. Because I needed to feel like I had chosen it. It sounds like semantics. It is not. We walked back out into the chaos. My vision felt tunneled, like I was watching someone else's life. I spotted Aaron on the deck talking to Oliver about some design concept. When he saw me, his face lit up for a split second, then rearranged into neutral professionalism when he took in my expression. I told him I needed to talk to him. He asked if everything was okay. I said we both knew it was not. We stepped into the small side yard by the garbage bins, the only place no one was hovering. The smell of salt and trash made the whole thing feel appropriately awful. I told him someone had seen us. I told him there was video. I told him there had been a message. I watched the blood drain from his face. He asked if they had sent it to anyone else. I said not yet. He swore softly. He asked to see it. I showed him. His shoulders sagged. He said this was his fault. That he should never have let anything happen. That I had more to lose than he did. He said he would handle it. That if someone wanted a fight, he would give them one. I told him I did not want a fight. I told him I wanted out. Out of this almost affair. Out of this secret. Out of this space I had created where my heart lived separate from my life. His eyes searched mine. He asked me if I was sure. I said I was not sure of anything except that I could not carry this and my marriage and my job and whatever unknown threat this message represented at the same time without breaking. He went quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. He said he understood. That he would keep his distance. That he cared about me too much to drag me into whatever this was going to become. He also said, very quietly, that it did not change what was true. That I deserved more than what I had. And that if my marriage had been enough, he would not have had a chance in hell. It was not a plea. It was a statement. We went back to being co-workers in public after that. Polite. Efficient. Careful. Pretending our hearts were not raw. The last day of the offsite, everyone hugged goodbye and posted group photos with captions about having the best team in the world. I packed my bag, hugged Mia, drove home with Harper, and spent the whole ride waiting for another message. None came. For 3 days there was silence. No new threats. No new links. No mention from anyone else of any video. I let myself start to believe it had been a bluff. I avoided Aaron's eyes in meetings. He respected the distance. I turned every conversation with Mia back to safe topics. She let me. I tried to be a wife again. Josh and I fell back into our routines like tired dancers returning to choreography they half remembered. Dinners eaten in front of the television. Dull sex scheduled between alarms. Conversations that skimmed the surface of everything. I thought maybe I could forget. Then the second message came. This time, there was no video. Just a screenshot. It was my firm's logo at the top of an email window. Below it, an in-draft note addressed to my boss. The subject line read ethics concern regarding Claire Morgan. The body of the message was the same text I had already read that day on my own laptop. It laid out my involvement with a key client contact and suggested I be removed from the account. I stared at the screenshot until my vision blurred. My first thought was that someone had accessed my computer. My second thought was that someone had decided to send that email whether I liked it or not. Below the screenshot, there was a line. I told you to walk away. I felt sick. Because that email draft was not finished. I had started writing it that morning, trying to force myself to confess before someone else did. I had not sent it. I had not shown it to anyone. It sat there, unsent, as a monument to some better, braver version of myself. Now someone had a picture of it. Which meant someone had been in my office. Or in my account. Watching. Recording. The message continued. Next time I do not send a screenshot. Next time I send the real thing. End it. I wish I could tell you I did something heroic then. That I traced the IP, stormed into some shadowy boardroom, slammed my phone down, and told whoever this was that I was not their puppet. I did not. I sat at my desk and shook. I called Mia. She came over that night with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. Josh was working late. The house felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. I showed her the message. She went very still. She asked if I had logged into my work email from home. I told her yes. She asked if I left my laptop open. I said sometimes. She asked if Josh ever used it. I said occasionally, when his was updating or he needed to print something from my account. I watched her face as I said it. She was thinking everything I was thinking. I said it before she did. Do you think it is him? She bit her lip. She said she did not know. She said people do strange things when they feel wronged. I wanted to defend him. I wanted to say he was too rational, too gentle, too conflict avoidant to pull something like this. I wanted to say he would never invade my privacy or risk my job. But then I remembered how absent he had been. How little he had fought when I asked for more connection. How easily he accepted my "I am fine." When someone never asks questions, you do not actually know what they are capable of. I realized with a start that I did not really know my own husband. I asked her if I should confront him. She said that confronting someone only works if you are ready to deal with whatever truth they give you. I said I was tired of not knowing. She said then maybe it was time for all of us to stop pretending. The next night, I asked him. We were sitting at the kitchen table, plates between us, the hum of the fridge filling the pauses in conversation. I told him there was something I needed to ask him and that I wanted him to be honest even if it hurt. He put his fork down. He waited. He is good at waiting. I asked him if he had sent anything to my boss. I watched his eyes. They flickered. Only for a second. He asked why I would think that. I told him about the screenshot. His face shuddered. He said he had not done it. His voice was flat. He did not look outraged. He did not look offended. He looked tired. I asked him if he believed me when I told him I had not done anything unforgivable at the offsite. He looked at his plate. He said he did not know what to believe. My chest hurt. I asked him why. He said because he had watched me disappear from him in pieces over the last year and he had no idea where I went. It was the closest thing to an accusation I had ever heard from him. We both went quiet. I thought about confessing everything in that moment. About the overlook. The couch. The kiss. The messages. The fear. The way I had felt both guilty and alive at the same time. I thought about telling him that our marriage was already in ruins before I ever looked at another man a certain way. I did not. Because the truth is, that confession was not something I did for him. It was something I had to do for me. And I was not ready. What I did do was end the conversation. Which is its own kind of confession. A week later, the email got sent. Not by me. I found out when I got called into my boss' office and saw the message printed on his desk. This time it did not have a draft tag. It had a timestamp. I read it and felt like I was hovering above my own body. He told me they were starting an internal review. That I would be moved off not just that client but several others. That they would be checking access logs and devices. He said he was disappointed. He said he had expected more judgment from me. He did not ask if the allegations were true. He assumed they were enough. That night, I went back to the one place all of this had started. The Coast House was long since returned to its owners, the fairy lights taken down, the rental fees paid. But Lane, the property manager, sometimes let employees rent one of the smaller cottages at off-season rates. I emailed her in a haze and asked if anything was free. One was. The little cottage near the overlook. The irony did not escape me. I packed a bag and drove down alone. When I arrived, the sky was the color of wet concrete. The air smelled like impending rain. The ocean was angrier than it had been in summer, waves taller, foam whipped high. I checked in, took the key, walked into the empty house that still carried echoes of our offsite. I did not tell anyone where I was going. Not Josh. Not Mia. Not Aaron. I turned my phone off. For the first 24 hours, I slept and cried intermittently. I let the grief come in waves, like the sea outside. Grief for my marriage as I thought it was. Grief for the version of myself who had believed she was immune to this kind of story. Grief for whatever my career had been. On the second day, there was a knock at the door. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then I did. Aaron stood there. He looked wrecked. Not dramatic movie wrecked. Just sincerely tired. Eyes lined. Shoulders slightly rounded. He told me, in a voice that sounded like sandpaper, that Mia had called him. That she was worried about me. That she had said I had taken off alone and she did not trust that I would reach out to anyone. Of course she had known where I went. She is the one who always remembers the details I forget to hide. He asked if he could come in. I should have said no. I stepped aside. He walked to the window and looked out at the gray water. He told me he had received an email too. Not about ethics. About the video. Whoever it was had finally pulled the trigger. They had sent the clip to his personal account with a short line. "Tell your wife before I do." He told me he had shown Elise. I asked him what she had done. He said she had looked at the video once, then at him, then at their daughters in the next room. Then she had told him he was a coward for letting someone else force the truth out and that she wanted a separation. He said it very calmly. I asked him if he hated me. He said he had made his own choices. He said he would not rewrite history now that it hurt. He also said the thing that cracked everything open. He said the email he got had Lauren in the CC line. I blinked. Lauren was our HR director. Which meant the sender was not some distant stranger outside the company. They knew our org chart. They knew exactly which pressure points to push. He said HR was launching an investigation into inappropriate relationships. That they would be interviewing people. That it would get messy. I asked him who he thought had done it. He hesitated. He said he had theories. I asked if one of them was my husband. He did not answer. Sometimes silence is its own answer. I felt very tired. I told him I could not do anything about the investigation except tell the truth when asked. I told him I would not lie to keep my job. Then I told him something I had not yet said out loud. I told him I did not know if I wanted that job anymore. He stared at me. He said that sounded like someone finally being honest with herself. We sat down at the small kitchen table, the same one where I had probably eaten breakfast during the offsite as a different person. We talked for hours. Not like lovers. Not like coworkers. Like two people who had stumbled into the same explosion and were now sitting in the wreckage together. At some point, he asked me what I was going to do about Josh. I told him I was going to tell him everything. Not because I thought it would save anything. Because I was tired of secrets. He nodded. He said he did not know if honesty came in time for his own marriage. Then he looked at me with this strange mix of affection and apology and said that if he had to do it again, he would still have kissed me on that couch. He said that not because he was proud of it. Because it had shown him how asleep he had been. Even if the awakening blew everything up. The third knock on the door that day was not Josh. It was Mia. She walked in without waiting for an invitation, eyes red, hair in a knot. She looked between me and Aaron and let out a bitter little laugh without humor. She said she figured she would find us together at some point. I asked her what that was supposed to mean. She said she had spent 2 weeks feeling like a traitor for telling Aaron where I had gone, only to realize I had already chosen my confessional partner. Her jealousy crackled in the air like static. Then she said something that twisted the knife. She said the investigation had already started. That people at the office were talking. That someone had sent anonymous tips not just about me and Aaron, but about several other people. She said HR was not just looking at us. They were looking at her. I stared at her. I asked why. She went quiet. Then she admitted something that should not have surprised me as much as it did. She had slept with one of the junior designers the year before. Nothing serious. A stupid mistake, she called it. They had kept it quiet. Apparently not quiet enough. She looked at both of us with something like betrayal. She said whoever had access to all of this was not just taking down one story. They were gutting the entire company. Aaron swore under his breath. He grabbed his phone, opened an email, and slid it across the table so we could see. The sender of the message to HR, the one attaching the video, had used a generic burner address. But the name field was not blank. It said Concerned Insider. That could have been anyone. But the attachment metadata told a different story. I did not understand most of it, but one small detail jumped out. The file path. It referenced a folder only a few people would have access to. HR shared drive. A sinking feeling washed over me. I asked Mia when Lauren had started working there. She said 3 years ago. I asked who had hired her. Aaron said he had. There were too many loops closing at once. I told them about the messages. The screenshots. The threats. We laid everything out on the table like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered on purpose. The footage. The draft emails. The investigating HR. The anonymous insider. There is a special kind of betrayal when the person tasked with protecting people is the one weaponizing their secrets. When the truth finally came out, it was so simple it made me tired. Lauren had been documenting everything for months. Hookups at office parties. Inappropriate jokes. Late-night texts between managers and direct reports. She told herself it was for liability, for compliance, for the day everything went wrong and she needed evidence. Then something in her snapped. She watched one too many men walk away from consequences. One too many women get whispered about in hallways. One too many pay disparities signed off by executives who smiled and shrugged. She decided to burn it all down. We did not learn all of this at once. It came in fragments. In leaked conversations. In documents discovered on the wrong drives. In a meeting where the board of directors asked everyone present to explain why their own files had copies of things they should not. In the end, one of the junior HR associates came forward with tears in her eyes and said quietly that she could not keep lying. That Lauren had asked her to help pull footage. That she had been promised this was about protecting staff. That it had not felt like protection in a very long time. I wish I could tell you there was some satisfying confrontation where we all stood up to her in a conference room bathed in fluorescent light and told her what she had done to our lives. What really happened is that she resigned via email, citing stress, and left the city. There was no villain to point to anymore. Just the debris. The internal investigation cleared me of any formal wrongdoing in terms of harassment or coercion. It did not clear me of bad judgment. I resigned before they could ask me to. Aaron took a step back from leadership, calling it a sabbatical so he could focus on his kids. I know it was partly that and partly stepping away before the board decided for him. Mia received a written warning and a mandatory training. She told me she felt like she had been put through a washing machine and hung out damp. Josh and I finally had the conversation we should have had a year before. I told him about the kiss. He told me about the resentment. I told him about the messages and the fear. He told me about the night he stood in the hallway with my laptop open and almost opened my email and did not because he was scared of what he might find. We sat at our kitchen table, hands around lukewarm mugs, and admitted that we had been unfaithful to each other long before any of this. Not in body. In effort. In attention. In care. We started couples therapy. Not to glue something broken back into its old shape. To see if there was anything new worth building on the rubble. Sometimes betrayal burns away the version of you that was trying too hard to be palatable. When you asked me for a story, I could have given you something simpler. I could have told you just the part where I kissed my boss on a couch at a coastal offsite and got caught. But that is not the real confession. The real confession is that for years I was more loyal to my image of myself than to my actual needs. I was faithfully married to an idea and cheating on my own desire. Aaron was a mirror for that. So was the anonymous camera. So was Lauren. Now, when I sit with you and tell you this, I am not the woman crying in the laundry room over a grainy clip on her phone. I am the woman who walked herself into a cottage on the coast, turned her phone off, and decided she was done letting other people draft her story. I still do not know if my marriage will survive in a recognizable form. I still do not know what version of friendship, if any, I will have with Mia. Aaron and I still work in the same industry. Sometimes our names show up on the same email chains. We are polite. Warm, even. There is a tenderness there that will always sting. Lauren is a ghost story people tell when they talk about digital trails. Sometimes, on particularly hard days, I drive down to that overlook by myself. I stand with my hands on the railing, the wind in my hair, the ocean roaring below. I remember the girl who walked down there feeling like she had no choices, and the woman who walked back up knowing that every choice would cost something but she would make it anyway. If you were next to me now, I would tell you this much, at least. The worst betrayal I lived through was not the kiss, the camera, or the email. It was all the times I refused to listen when my life whispered that it was too small and I told it to hush. Everything that came after was my life raising its voice.